Today we are going to talk about the 6 forms of bloom, since we're right in peak season right now. And there are 6 forms, and notice focusing here on the sign, we have the 6 forms here in picture form, and their descriptions on the sign. And notice the first one, the simplest form, is a single, which means it's the 5 or more broad petals surround the pollen-bearing stamens and seed-bearing carpels. So in the center here, you'll just have 2 rows of petals, and then you'll have the stamens and the carpels in the center. Very simple form. A lot of people don't like that form as well. It's kind of unique. It's not my favorite form. Then we get into the Japanese, which is this one right here. The guard petals, which are the surrounding petals, the center parts become staminodes. They become a little more developed than the stamens. They become bigger. And in some cases of Japanese, they appear as real miniature petals. Now the anemone form, which is the middle one, and there's overlap between anemone and Japanese type peonies. The anemone, the guard petals, the outer dark pink ones on this one, are enclosed petaloids, which are small petals, skinny petals that come out. This one, I would say, could be a Japanese form going into a bomb, but it's a complicated Japanese form. Then, anemone form. Excuse me. I would say that would be more of an anemone. I said Japanese, and I meant anemone, so. It really is. Yeah, it is, because the staminodes are going into skinny petals. Right, the center. So there's overlap there. So when some people say, well, that looks anemone to me, or that looks Japanese, they're probably right, because they do overlap. Then the next one is a semi-double form, which is the prominent pollen-bearing stamens are intermixed with large petals. You still can see the center, and but you have a lot more complex rows of petals, more petals. And there are some here that I think we are confused, and I guess we just have to have the book to define some of them, like that feather top. There's such a messed up thing. I don't know what it would be. Well, we do know what it is, because we just have to get the book. Okay, we might find out what feather top is. I forget. It's probably a double. But anyhow, then we go from the semi-double to the bomb, which the guard petals on the bottom are big, and then they have this bomb poof coming up. And there is overlap between a bomb and a double. A double, the petals are pretty much all the same size. The guard petals and all the others. That's a very typically basic double. Different from the bomb, in that the bomb, the petals are up, they're small, but there's a big poof coming up. Overlap between those two as well, because you'll have some peonies that come out and they look like they're going to be a bomb, and then they end up being a double, or vice versa. So it's uncharacterized. Now to me, this one would be a bomb, and I think Princess Bride is a bomb. See how the big guard petals are big, and then it's got all these others, but it's also trying to be a double too. But those, to me, that's a bomb form there. Okay? The 6 forms, peony forms. There's also another form that has been out there. It's a rose form, but we haven't talked about it because very few of them are rose-formed peonies. So as we go through the garden, I guess we'll look to see what some of the forms and try to figure out what some of the forms of the flowers are, one of the 6 forms that we have.
This is kind of worth showing in, if you look at the picture for Ann Cousins. This I find very interesting. We have a little yellow dot to show we have it in the garden. And then you look at the enclosed bud and bloom coming out. It looks more like a head of cabbage than it does a beautiful flower. And this is a full double, and it's probably going to be a little different from this because every bloom is its own thing. But we're amazed at how they look like they're just sort of wired together in some weird way. And then they come out and suddenly it's glorious, like the red one there, Paul M. Wild. So beautiful. And feather top, I'm going to look up here because it's interesting, is a Japanese, and I'm learning along with everybody who's coming to visit. This is the guy that owns a peony nursery now, Paul Wild, or it might be his father, I'm not sure, Gary knows. And when that was all sealed up, it looked like somebody taking little wires and just throwing them inside there. And now it's getting ready to do its thing with a side bud. And we can say and remind people that when there are side buds on the same stem, the official name for that is lactiflora. And lactiflora just means white flower. So you think, how can this be? It's not white at all. But lactiflora, it means one of the parents is the ancient Chinese peony, the common peony of China, and it was a lactiflora, and it's always a white flower. And historically, for thousands of years, it's been so strong and so enduring that it is the parent, one of the parents, of most hybrids today. So that can be looked up and studied and learned about. But every peony is unique, so now lactiflora can refer to any peony that has more than one bud on a stem. Here is another lactiflora. Some in this garden, here's lactiflora as well. And the side buds may mature to large blooms, or they may not bloom at all, or they may bloom smaller, but they tend to extend the season, so this one will bloom. This is our only stem with a bloom this year for feathertop. And it's going to be so incredible to see these. I don't even know, Gary has to come and help us, but this is enough for the moment that we're already getting great visitors this morning at the garden. This is a year of great learning, so we're learning. This year the peonies are coming to full height, and we didn't expect that, so they're getting good fertilizers and they're getting good life, and they're having their lactiflora buds blooming almost on top and next to the main terminal bud. That's called the terminal bud, and this is a definite bomb, it's called, not because it bombed out, but because it's like a fireworks bomb when they shoot up and the fireworks just burst into the atmosphere. And this is called angel cheeks. I think it's because it reaches almost to the angels. That's my opinion. So the guard petals reveal the complexity, and this is just heavy, literally heavy, with multiple blooms, not just multiple buds. So we're going to be staking and twining at a whole new level, which is not a bad problem to have. So that's a beautiful bomb, an example of a bomb. We saw the double over there that's coming, but not a double that's blooming. Here's a beautiful example of something, so maybe I can find out. Duchess de Nemours, this is already blooming out, but it has the greatest fragrance. It's one of the beautiful perfume, you would almost say. It's just so when people come, they won't step into the garden. That's not allowed except for those of us who know where everything is. But they can, on the borders here, they can sniff and see what the peonies do, because they have their own life. So here we have orange lace. And when it first blooms, I've noticed that it sort of has the yellower, maybe that's the lace, and it's a little bit yellow right now, but maybe it just hints at orange at first, and then it has this little feathery flounce or whatever it would be. Don't know all the names, sorry, but it's worth just looking at. And look at all these side buds. It's just like a bouquet. And we're happy when people just leave everything for everyone to enjoy. So that, I say again, we've had somebody that seems to want to harvest peonies and take them home. And in a couple of cases, they took the only bloom, period, off the plant. We think that that person needs to learn to care about others. So that's a beauty. And it's just a great combo of like a pink. These guard petals start out and then they fade a little bit to less pink, but they first open. Here's a good example on the back here, how it's looking, the new opening. And I don't know if I could show the orange anywhere other than just on the vestiges, but this is so amazing, which is one of the great things about all these peonies, is every one is different practically. We have more than 200 of the 229 spaces, they're called, or plants. More than 200 are unique varieties. This is an Ito. Gary has been pointing out the Ito. So Ito is a type of peony, a cross between a tree, again a tree, and herbaceous. This is a regular old herbaceous peony, just plain old vegetation all the way from the ground up, and it dies back every autumn when the frosts come. And some of them go into autumn colors as they're sort of retreating for winter. And they have to have a winter climate. I'm sure Gary's told everybody. They have to have a cold, a period of cold. It's part of their existence. They can't be raised in Florida, for example, or mostly in Arizona, except maybe the highest elevations. So here we have this Ito that is a cross between a tree. Over here is the tree, a tree. And the tree, this is review for everybody. The tree has bark, and the bark can be seen under there, and the vegetation part of the stem will die back to the bark. But every year the bark gets more, and eventually the bark can support a 6 to 8 foot or 4 to 6 foot plant, probably 3 to 5 feet in Montana because of shorter growing season. So the Ito has the leaves of the tree and the stems of the herbaceous. So there will be no bark here. This is interesting. This looks like it's bark, but it's actually just a husk from last season. This is the second year. Our wonderful garden specialist here at the U, Kelly Chadwick, is telling us that this garden already looks like a third-year garden instead of a second-year garden. And that's because these are already full size. And next year they'll be full size and full height and full breadth, you might say. It won't be long before they'll be sharing each other's space. And just for fun, people can know that this lovely knick, which somebody thought one day, can I pull that weed for you? And I said, no, because it's not a weed, it's ground cover. So the plan is that by the time the mulches are sort of, let's say, composting, just deteriorating naturally, bark chips, the knick will take over and be spreading on the ground, and it will keep the shade and the weeds down and keep the moisture for the plants and all kind of benefits, and they coexist nicely. So that's very happy news. So this Ito is called Lemon Dream, and I have to look it up because I won't know if it's in here or not. I don't know. I'll see if I can find it. But Lemon Dream is one of the Itos that the flower may or may not be anything related to Ito per se. Hijkl. This is the Adelman's catalog from Oregon. They're really great specialists, and because of their climate they can grow and lemon chiffon. Here's Lemon Dream. Yay! This is interesting then to know from the catalog that it's a semi-double. It's not as filled out with petals in the center as a full double. So you get to see some of the pollen and stamens and whatever, ovaries and all the things that are inside of the center. Some of these are sterile, I don't know which ones, but that comes as a result of pairing a tree with an herb, like maybe pairing an elephant with a giraffe. They tried thousands of times, and it failed and it failed and it failed thousands of times. I think one of the other episodes we talked about how Mr. Ito, that's the name of this type, Mr. Ito in Japan in 1948, he was able to finally, after thousands of failures, he got only 7 little seedlings in 7 different pots. He died 8 years later, and still there hadn't been one bloom. He died with it without ever knowing what the bloom would be. And so in 1956 he died. It took another 8 years before his widow and his children saw the blooms. So that was 16 years from the sprouting of, most of the seeds were sterile, didn't do anything. 7 of them lived. And then he got 16 years later the first blooms. And then a guy named Louis Smirnoff, I don't know if it's the vodka guy or somebody else, somebody can look that up and tell us, but Mr. Smirnoff got in touch with the widow and said, is there any hope that we could start to make these work, make them available? I'm getting gaspy sounds here. But we believe in wearing masks at the garden, and by the time people see this episode, the blooms will be waning, but COVID will not be waning. So please, we protect each other with masks. That's so important. Always, Gary pointed out, the buds of the Ito, they have this little tree peony shape to them. That's so interesting, a little point. And that point is part of what tells us that it's an Ito. And Mr. Smirnoff was kind enough to share the Ito name because everybody around the world, not everybody, but many people in many countries were trying to make the cross between the tree and the herbaceous. And it's really been a great success because look at the health of this plant. They have such strong stems. We haven't staked every plant this year, and this one we don't even have to worry about because they have such strong stems. They stand as if they were a tree, and they survive wind and rain and hail and sleet. I don't know about hail, and sleet's probably in the winter. And I don't know if these seeds are sterile. I have no idea about that, but it's all part of the deal to learn, and it's good to learn. So we're all learning together. Lemon Dream, a semi-double. Here's a single, I'm pretty sure, but maybe it's Japanese, so I'm going to look up because it's a very famous one. And this is like the third set of blooms on this plant, Scarlet O'Hara. It's one of the beauties, and it just stands proudly in this garden. It's really amazing. Scarlet O'Hara, Scarlet O'Hara. There it is. It's a single, that's what I said. And the single has 1 or 2 rows of guard petals, and then a very prominent center. And this one will be 36 inches tall. We have one over there that is, and we can get to that perhaps, but this is for the side buds of a lactiflora, many blooms per stem. Here we can see it. The terminal bud, the lead bud, has already formed seeds. And a lot of people are asking us, why aren't we taking off the seed pods yet? Well, we don't know that we dare to because of the people that have been cutting blooms. And we think if we start cutting off the seed pods, some people will think, oh, everybody's harvesting the blooms. Let's go for it. So we're trying to figure that out. The campus police are even helping. They want to put up either a surveillance camera or signs that say this is criminal mischief code such and such and such. Violators will be prosecuted, but we don't want to do that if we don't have to, because everyone should respect. This is a year of the greater good and the year of caring for each other, not the year of selfishness and cutting blooms and taking them home. So this is the lead bloom, and this is a later lactiflora side bud at work on a single. Let's see what else we can find. This is Catherine with a K. It's a lovely peony, and I'll just see if I can find, because I don't dare guess. Catherine seems maybe not to be in this catalog, so Gary will tell us. This one, My Love, if I were to guess, it looks like almost an anemone, but it might be a semi-double. And we had this flower bloom last year, and it was also just as beautiful last year. This is a double. So that's what I don't fully know, because I think a double's the same color center as guard petals, but so that must be the same center. And then these are petaloids, if I'm not mistaken, when they look more like petals than, if that's the right word, is the stamen and the pollen on the end of the stamen. But I've got to review all that, so forgive me if you're a botanist and listening to this show. You can write me a pointed email. Here we have Edula superba, and I'm just kind of going in order here. Edula superba is a double, so we know for sure now. This is lactiflora, more than 1 bud per stem. These are not prime buds. This one over here almost, or this one, pretty close. And sometimes you don't, oh, there is. There's a little baby side bud right there. But not every stem will have a side bud, so you have to see several before you know if you're lactiflora or you're single bud per stem. I don't know the official term for that because it's not non-lactiflora. And I've seen terminal bud only. I wonder if this wasn't terminal bud only, because look here, somebody stole this. It's worth public seeing that it's just sad. Why? And so here's 1 bud. Here's 1 bud, there's 1 bud. I don't see any. Of course, we can't tell till next year, but that seems to be a terminal bud only plant. This is so beautiful. Look at the complexity, even before I look it up. The guard petals, 2 rows of guard petals. And then all of the, looks like it's still stamens. Oh, Gary, thank you. Can you help with this? Are those stamens and pollen?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have more petals, and then you have what, more stamens and pollen?
Now, is bullet cream a double?
I'm going to look it up right now.
I think it's a double, but I still think it's a semi-double.
Yeah, I don't dare look.
See,
it isn't in here. Oh, yes, it is. Yes, bowl of cream. Creamy white, double, lightly fragrant, and mid-season, which we are right now. 34 inches tall, so it'll get a little taller. Very large, luscious, cream white flower. Mm-hmm. Wonderful cut flower, but don't, please, public, don't cut the flowers. Okay, so that, forget the little part in here. It says wonderful cut flower. This is an example. I guess today we're talking a little bit about honoring the garden for everyone to enjoy. Someone tried so hard to yank these two petal blooms off of the stems that they pulled the whole plant out of the ground. And so then they at least had the decency to try to replant it. But now we think these are sort of blasting. They might try to bloom minimally, but they've been really severely compromised. Here's another Ito. We have 12 in the garden. If anyone comes to the garden, they should just see if they can find, cheaper by the dozen. We'll probably someday have a 13th, which will be the baker's dozen. But 12 of these exist in the garden, the Itos, thanks to Mr. Ito. He got the name I started to say before because he was the only one that succeeded. They were trying in Russia, they were trying in the United States, they were trying in China to get this combination. Japan was the first to succeed, like somebody got to land on the moon first and only one time. So this Ito is, look, reaching for heaven all by itself. And if people want to look for the Itos without looking on the directory, which is available at facebook.com on the Reinhardt Peony Garden page, you can find that we have 12 of them just by looking for these leaves. Now, if you see these leaves, it could be a tree. So the identification labels for each plant should say tree, if it's a tree that we tried to designate. But if it's an Ito, we haven't said that yet. That's for your detective work. Here's a little baby Felix Supreme. It isn't looking very, our great videographer has to go, so I'm going to ask Gary to help us make sure we find an anemone. But Felix, what is it? Felix Supreme. Felix Supreme. This is a double, can you believe it? It's so tiny in its first year. It's coming up for the second year, but I think this is the first year of it blooming, so it'll be bigger next year. It's fun to notice how the mature plants are already towering, and the new plants that are taking their time are letting us know they're happy, but they just need another year to grow up. This is the gift of a botanist in town and his family, Peter Stickney. I think Diane is maybe the daughter, or Gary will tell us. But they offered these 5 in a row, and only the outer 2, like bookends. And this is a very, you might say, common peony of the hybrids. It's from I want to say 1850. I can find out. It's Festiva Maxima. 1851, I was off by a year, sorry guys. Millet from France. And it's a French peony, French perfumed even. It's got a very clean smell. And beautiful foliage. And it's a very sturdy plant. It's very, you might say it's grown into its place in the world. And it always has little red flecks. Here's another version. It's Lactiflora. And these aren't perfect blooms, but they're here. So we're so thrilled to have the double. This is a double. Very fragrant, it says. 36 inches tall, so it's working its way into the garden. These are both trees, and we don't have the blooms anymore, so we won't take the time. But here's the foliage, and you might think it's an Ito, and then you look underneath and you say, wait, you look carefully underneath, and you would see the trunk, or the woody stems. They really just call them woody stems. Maybe kind of like your lilac, except lilacs don't die back, a whole bunch of the plant doesn't die every year. So they're unique as well. And they're very ancient, except now they also have hybrids. So the hybrids have names. This one, Renown, is named a hybrid tree in 1949. so people can know, they can find their way through the garden by going D1, D2, D3, D4. And if I may say, our wonderful videographer standing right here but never looking at himself with the camera, Ron Scholl, is helping us get a picture of every bloom that blooms this year. And they go alphabetically by A1, A2, A3, that way it's alphabetical. And then the B garden, which is over here, and then the C garden, and this is the D garden. And those are not grades, those are just identifiers. And you can see the various blooms on Facebook, even if it's finished blooming. And some of these won't bloom at all. It's just the first year for Otten's White. It was a replant. But look at this, we thought it was dead. Gay, it's not dead. Sometimes when you see the plant not coming up, you get later in the midsummer, or this is Swedish midsummer exactly today. So I'm half Swedish, so I know, and my Swedish friends in Sweden have showed me what they do. They were up all night. I felt like I was up all night and was late getting here this morning. Coral charm is a victim of the microburst. And the microburst was a stormy day recently. Somebody stole a bloom off of here, or maybe it broke. But this is coral charm. And it's a unique color compared to the usual pinks and reds and whites. It's more, what, coral. Not the OK Corral like Montana Rodeo, but coral. And here's a faded bloom, but you see how they maintain their dignity and their beauty all the way through. And here's coral. Yeah, exactly, until they can't anymore. And here's the stamens and the pollen and the ovary. And let's just see what coral charm says, because it's already one of our committee members' favorite flower. And that's Sue Talbot. Hi. So coral charm, I'm going to get to it quickly. Coral sunset, coral charm. This is a semi-double. And I could have been fooled to think it was a Japanese or something. But semi-double means your center petals are getting more complex. You see how many there are? There's not just the 2 rows of guard petals. It's moving in the direction of kind of emerging, so you no longer even see the stamens and the pollen and all the others. The 3 little, usually you see the 3 ovary seed pods inside. So now we've seen what? Semi-double, single, and Gary pointed out Japanese. Ada Neve I know is Japanese. Let's go over here, I think. You can show the, yeah, thank you. This is Japanese. And I could be fooled because already Japanese is not usually as complex of petaloids. So here the stamens and the pollen are really representing, they look more like petals. It's just kind of an amazing evolution in peonies. There's something like 5,865 particular varieties. Look at this one. Even if we don't identify what it is, just look how the side buds can become part of a bouquet. Isn't that remarkable? This is red magic. And look at the little drop of morning rain on the petal there. So this is, I'm sure, must be full double, because the petals inside have engulfed any, you can't even see pollen or anything. So that's red magic. I'll see if I can find it. Red charm is also, I would guess, I'll just find the red here, red in the catalog. Okay, red. Here we are, get the page. Red rose, red grace, red charm. What did I say, red magic? Then we don't have red magic this year. But red charm is a double. Deep red, oh no, it's a bomb. Okay, they identify this as a bomb, which means there's this, a bit of an explosion or a burst. And there's a point, you know, where a double becomes, actually the bomb comes before the double in the list of complexities. So, forgive us, the public, on what we don't know, but we're learning. And it's just remarkable, all these different things. So now we've seen the bomb, and we've seen the double, full double, and we've seen the, we haven't seen an anemone. Gary, can you tell me an anemone we could look at for sure? Bowl of Beauty? Bowl of Beauty? Where's such a class?
It's not blooming yet.
Okay.
The one that's close to it would be Mini Happy Return.
Okay.
That reddish pink one over there.
Thanks, Ron. Bowl of Beauty. I'm looking for this one. They don't have Bowl of Beauty. Is Bowl of Beauty an anemone? It isn't in here. This might be. This is the idea of an anemone, even if it isn't. You guys can look it up online or when you're sitting and watching MCAT. So the idea is you have 1 or 2 rows of guard petals. It may or may not be lactiflora. This one is. Look at all those side buds, which is fabulous, I think. And then the center now is becoming more complex than just the stamens and the pollen. And when the stamens and pollen are starting to unify into something that are called, looking like this but not yet, it's called staminodes. And when it gets more complex yet, where the pollen, you don't even see it anymore, maybe it's sort of sterile, I don't know that, you get petaloids. Petaloids are more advanced than staminodes. Not staminoids, but staminodes. So everyone sees we're learning together on this. Gay Paris. Here's Gay Paris. This is still called Japanese, which surprises me, because for me, Japanese is, this for me would be an anemone. But that's why there's no special thing where one plant defines itself and the other one is totally different. There's a continuum, if you want to call it that, that they're always on. So I think, did I finish up before I got interrupted? This happens to be the morning that the article about the garden appeared in the Missoulian. So people are going to be showing up more and more on tomorrow's Father's Day, so there should be families here. And this is just the peak. Some have finished their blooms, others have not bloomed yet. And the ones that are blooming, many of them are in the peak of their own bloom. So the side buds will come yet, and the lead buds will fade.
Did you know the plant ecologist? Yeah,
these signs, too, we're so happy they put them up.